A man froze to death in the Alps over 5,000 years ago, and somehow, that turned out to be the lucky part of his story. His body stayed hidden in the ice for more than 5,000 years, perfectly preserved, waiting for someone to find him. When hikers finally did in 1991, scientists thought they were looking at a tragic accident, a traveler caught in a snowstorm. They were wrong. Buried in his shoulder was proof of something far darker, and it would take a decade to see it. This is the story of Ötzi the Iceman, the oldest murder victim ever found, and the arrow that finally told the truth about his final day. Who wanted him dead, and why, is a mystery that still has no clean answer. On September 19, 1991, two German hikers named Erika and Helmut Simon were walking through the Ötztal Alps on the border of Austria and Italy. Melting glacier ice had exposed something strange poking out of the snow. At first, everyone assumed it was a modern climber who had died in an accident. Mountain rescue teams even used a jackhammer to help chip the body free, not realizing how badly that could have damaged what they were looking at. It was only after the body reached a lab that scientists realized what they actually had. Carbon dating placed the man's death between 3,350 and 3105 BC, making him roughly 5,300 years old. He was, and still is, the oldest naturally preserved human mummy ever discovered in Europe. His skin, his organs, even his last meal had survived intact, frozen in place since the Copper Age. But if the ice had kept him so perfectly, how did he end up there in the first place? Researchers guessed he might have gotten lost in a storm, or simply collapsed from exhaustion or cold. For years, that was the accepted story, a sad but simple ending. Scientists studied his body, inch by inch anyway, because a mummy this complete was too valuable to leave unexamined. He stood about 5'3" and was around 45 years old when he died, old age by Copper Age standards. His stomach still held the remains of his last meal, red deer meat, likely eaten with some grain, along with traces of ibex bones, mushrooms, and wild fruit he'd carried with him. His body was covered in 61 tattoos, simple lines and crosses across his back, legs, and wrist, placed suspiciously close to joints that showed signs of wear and arthritis. Many researchers now think they weren't decoration at all, but an ancient form of pain treatment, something close to acupuncture. Everything about him suggested an experienced outdoorsman who took care of his body and knew these mountains well. That only made his death stranger. A man this prepared should not have simply frozen on a mountainside. Then in 2001, a full decade after his discovery, a routine CT scan changed everything. Buried deep in Ötzi's left shoulder, hidden from the earlier examinations, was a flint arrowhead. It had entered from behind and torn through his subclavian artery, one of the major blood vessels near the collarbone. That kind of injury causes rapid, massive blood loss. Within minutes, he would have been unable to keep going. This was not a man who wandered into a storm. This was a man who was hunted down and shot. The story of an unlucky traveler was gone, replaced by something closer to a crime scene frozen in time. And once investigators knew to look for violence, they started finding it everywhere on his body. His right hand carried a deep cut through the palm, a wound that had already started to heal by the time he died. That meant it happened 1 or 2 days earlier, in a completely separate incident. It looked exactly like a defensive wound, the kind someone gets when they grab a blade to stop it from cutting deeper. So before the arrow ever found him, Ötzi had already survived one violent confrontation. Scans also revealed a head injury and bruising on his body, along with unhealed cuts on his hands and wrists. Whoever came after him didn't strike just once. This had been building for days, maybe longer, and Ötzi seemed to know trouble was following him. That raised an unsettling question. If he knew someone was after him, why was he still up in those mountains instead of somewhere safer? The answer might be sitting in his own equipment. When scientists tested his gear in 2003, they found blood from at least 4 different people. 2 separate blood traces turned up on a single arrowhead still in his quiver, suggesting he had used that same arrow to strike to different people and pulled it back out both times. A third trace was found on his knife, and a fourth was on his cloak, in a pattern that suggests he may have carried a wounded companion on his back before the end. This wasn't one man running from a random attacker. This looks like the aftermath of a real fight, possibly involving several people, with Ötzi right in the middle of it. He was retreating uphill, away from the valley, carrying his own weapons and possibly someone else's blood. Whatever happened, he was trying to get away from something, and it caught up with him anyway. So who wanted him dead? There's no confession here, no name written in the ice, only clues. One leading theory points to his copper axe, a rare and valuable object in 300 BC. That would have marked him as a person of status, maybe even a leader or someone worth robbing. Another theory suggests a blood feud, a cycle of revenge between rival groups that had already drawn blood before that final day on the mountain. Investigators also noticed something telling. The arrow's wooden shaft had been removed after he was shot, even though the stone tip stayed lodged in his shoulder. Pulling out a shaft while leaving a man to die suggests the killer wasn't a stranger passing through. It suggests someone who knew him, who wanted to erase the evidence, or maybe just wanted the shaft back. Whatever the motive, someone stood over Ötzi on that ridge and decided he needed to disappear. In the end, the science tells a clear story even without a name attached to it. Ötzi didn't freeze to death by accident. He was already wounded, already hunted, when an arrow tore into his shoulder from behind and severed an artery he had no way to repair. He likely bled out within minutes, alone on a mountain pass, with the people who wanted him dead nowhere in sight, or maybe standing right there watching. Snow buried him within days, and the ice did the rest, sealing the whole scene for over 5,000 years. Somewhere on that mountain, a killer walked away and was never named, never caught, never even remembered. The ice kept his secret far longer than any human ever could have. If this kind of ancient mystery pulls you in, there's more waiting on this channel. Hit subscribe so the next one lands in your feed the moment it drops. A like helps more than most people realize, and sharing this with someone who loves a good mystery costs nothing but takes 10 seconds. History's full of cold cases like this one, and there's always another waiting to be uncovered.